Welcome to SURTHRIVAL Podcast, the podcast for people who need to learn to befriend their grief. I'm Stacia Gaines, your host, and I am thrilled to continue this series, Mourn with Those Who Mourn. People who know someone who has lost someone close to them, sometimes they don't know what to say, they don't know what to do, and sometimes they don't do anything. And as I've said before, that is the absolute worst thing you can do, is to do nothing. So this whole series is designed for those of you who know someone who is grieving and you just don't know quite what to say or what to do. Today's episode is sponsored by Gina Folletta State Farm. Gina is my State Farm agent, and she is amazing. She is personal. She meets with me regularly to make sure I've got the right coverage, and she is an award-winning State Farm agent. So thank you, Gina, for sponsoring this episode today. I am so excited this morning to have with me two friends. I've got Angel Torres. Angel is married to my dear friend Kristen Torres, who is a minister at Dawson Memorial Baptist Church, where I go. Angel plays drums there and is someone that I have not known that well, but know his wife very well. So I'm very thankful to have Angel with us today. And then I've got Meryeum Tunagur-Williams. Meryeum and I met one another at Birmingham Education Foundation when she was on staff, and I'm still on that board. And I have just always been impressed with her presence, with her wisdom, with her wit, and her communication. And so both of these folks bring a different perspective to mourning with those who mourn. And we're going to, after they introduce themselves a little bit further, we're going to ask them some questions, and hopefully, as usual, you get some good ideas as to how you could help someone you know who is grieving. So, Meryeum, we'll start with you. Introduce yourself to our listeners.
Well, hello, everyone. As Stacia said, my name is Meryeum Tunagur-Williams, and I am a lifelong learner turned educator with a background in theater educational psychology. So I'm really rooted in how we can use theater as a therapeutic method. And that has historically looked specifically like serving children and adults with learning differences. But as I have grown, it's really turned into helping people see that theater is a tool that we as humans have the privilege of using to help us understand the human experience, and that in and of itself is therapeutic. So,
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to be here, having known Stacia for roughly almost 8 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, it is.
And being a fan and a listener of the podcast,
Aww.
It's just so great to be behind the mic. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, Angel?
Yes, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Angel Torres. I grew up in Venezuela and moved to Birmingham back in 1999, a while back, and went to school at Sanford. And when I
Go
was
Bulldogs.
there, yes, that's right. I studied religion. I did religious studies at Sanford, and then I went back and did my master's over there. So kind of my Sanford was my connection to Birmingham when I first moved here. But like Stacia mentioned, my wife has been in ministry for about 16 years now, maybe longer than that. I can't remember exactly.
And she's awesome.
Yes, so she is, I agree. And I have been involved in ministry with her, kind of like on the other side, being the husband of the minister. The churches normally get 2 for 1 when they hire either, they get the spouse for free. And I've been involved when she did student ministries. And now that she does mostly women's ministry, I'm less involved, but I'm still somewhat. So anyway, but I work as a realtor. That's my main job with Arc Realty, helping people buy and sell homes. And when I'm not doing that, I'm playing drums or teaching drums. Also I'm involved at Sanford. I teach a conversation class at Sanford that I've been doing
I didn't
for a
know
long
that.
time for Spanish.
Cool.
Right. And when I am not doing that, then I'm also serving on the board at World Reach. It's a ministry that's been mission ministries, been based on been in Hoover, based at Hoover for 45 years, but international presence in like 14 different countries right now. So anyway, yes, I'm glad to be here, and thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Meryeum, we'll come back to you. Tell us a little bit about your story, like your loss, your grief.
Yeah, I think we all have grief in very different ways, and I think there are a lot of different ways I have grieved in my young 30 years on this planet. But my main story of grief is very centered around being a caregiver for both of my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, for about 10 years. Wow. And being caregivers alongside my mother and my sister, and not only having to understand and like move through my own grief of losing my grandparents, but also my mother losing her parents, and my sister who lived full time with my grandmother after my grandfather's passing, being then a support for her and my mother. And that happening in like when I was in college and then right after I graduated. And so being in my 20s, trying to be a support for my mother and my sister, and just navigating all the growth that comes along with that. And then how that turned me into the support for my husband, who at the time was not my husband, but he lost both of his parents, his grandparents who raised him within the span of 2 years. So it was interesting. It's fascinating because while he was going through that grief, I felt so strongly that the reason I had to, like the hardship I faced in overcoming the grief of losing my grandparents and supporting my parents made me such a better partner to him, and coming in that full circle and saying like, oh, I had to go through that so I could be there for him. And not that it made it worth it, but it was that full moment of, if I hadn't done that, I couldn't be what he needed. And now I get to be that. And so that's it.
And I should say, I actually first asked Meryeum to be on the Caregiver SURTHRIVAL Series, because she was one of the two people that said to me, Stacia, you really need to do a series on caregivers. Yeah. But unfortunately, due to her job and summer camps with children's theater, she was unable to be on that series. So I just wanted her to be on a series, but she also has a lot to offer for the caregiver out there. So thank you, Meryeum.
Thank you.
Okay, Angel, would you tell us kind of your story of loss?
So my story of loss, really the one that I'll talk about mostly today is when I lost my father. I had obviously lost grandparents and uncles and cousins and other non-immediate family members, and you go through that, and you think you have an idea what that's like, and until you lose someone who's immediate family member, and that's when you realize, okay, this is whole different. And for me, it was losing my father, and he was the first one in my immediate family that we lost, and so far, the only one for me, but. That particular instance, it was different. It hit me really hard. It took a while to recover from the stages of grief with that. So, yeah.
And it was rather sudden, wasn't it?
It was unexpected. And so right at a time where you're thinking everything it's in place and everything is good for him to be living a life, being retired, and at that point they have moved to the United States, so they had a house about 10 minutes away from our house, and they're around. We get to share time together, and they're around their grandkid Dante and so on, and all of a sudden he's gone. So that was shocking.
And that's the thing about grief. It's not just the loss of your father. You kind of lost the hopes and dreams you had of spending time with them 10 minutes from your house, them getting to spend time with Dante, their grandson. And it's kind of multifaceted, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah. And two, I think the closer you are to whoever it is that you're losing, I think that everybody grieves differently, and not two people grieve the same way. And that's
So
the most
true.
important thing to understand, I think, for any of us, that it's just very different. And had my relationship with him not been a good relationship, we had a great relationship and we could talk about just anything, it probably would have been different. But being close and everything, and you have, like you said, you have all these expectations for what life should look like, and you always think, well, that was cut short, and it's never an idea that feels natural,
Right.
and it shouldn't feel natural. I truly believe that it was not God's original intent for us to go through that, so we should never get used to it.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Angel, while you're talking, you grew up in Venezuela until what age?
I was 20 when
20.
I moved here.
Talk a little bit about some of maybe the cultural things that shaped how you grieved and what you did and what you didn't do when your father died.
So,
And also, you're a male, so that's a kind of a different perspective,
yes,
possibly too.
like growing up in Venezuela, things are done a little bit different than here. In every culture, everywhere people do funerals and grieving time differently. I mean, for example, the tradition in Venezuela for many people is that when somebody in a given family dies, they will go for a period of time where they won't even play music in the house.
Wow, how long?
So it could be weeks, it could be months.
Ooh.
Because they're mourning, and so you're not supposed to have music, period, any kind of music. And so that's what, I remember, people, they call it luto, or the mourning time, and you don't. When the stage of the times, I don't know, maybe because this is over 26 years ago, but they were still customary to have few open casket velorium on somebody's house. So when my grandmother died, for example, they had a open casket in the living room of her house.
Wow.
For everybody to come and do like a viewing and whatever, pay their respects. And so same was true for my grandfather on my mom's side, and very heavily on the Catholic tradition. So people come together and do the prayers and the rosary prayers and things like that. And there's a period of time where there's certain prayers that happen over an extended period of like a week or so. So those are, and when they don't do it at somebody's house, and they'll do it at a funeral home, people come to the funeral home and do a viewing and a talking and everybody stays up all night for like 3 or 4 nights in a row. Everybody
Wow.
stays up all night. So the biggest gift people bring is like a big jar of coffee, because there's people there at the funeral home for days. That's on that. Then you also get mixed in the part of the culture, like there's still some Indian tribes that the way they approach it is completely different. There's a Indian tribe called the Wayu Indians, and because of what they believe, they actually, when somebody's born, they cry, and when somebody dies, they have a party.
Oh, wow.
Because their root belief is that the people come to earth to suffer. And so when somebody dies, they're like, okay, great, they're not suffering anymore. Now we can celebrate. And so that's how they celebrate it. I mean, it's completely different. But anyway, for me, being here and seeing the different ways that people approach the time of death for families, and so it was a little different, but understanding too a lot of the impact that the Christian faith has on that is very different. So yeah,
Right. My daughter reminded me this morning, we lived in China for 5 years, and it was very interesting to me. I've always been interested in other cultures, and in the Chinese culture, it was kind of taboo to talk about death and funerals. I remember we were doing an English club, and I wanted to talk about funerals. I wanted to understand the culture and the traditions, and they were like, we don't want to talk about that. But there were often firecrackers, to scare away the evil spirits. There were parades. There were kind of the paid mourners often. And it's in every culture, there is something that people do to mourn the loss of their loved one. And so we are affected by our culture and our upbringing. Meryeum, talk a little bit about that for you, your culture.
So with my grandparents, my mother was raised non-denominational, and that was a very traditional, like, funeral home, graveside, boom, we're done. However, being raised Muslim, and my father actually is Turkish, and his father was the Prime Minister of Religion and Cultural Affairs for Turkey. And I remember when he passed, this is when I was 10. I think I was 10 when he passed.
And you were living there.
I was living in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And this was that was the first time grief ever struck me. As a 10-year-old, losing my grandfather, who we were very, very close to. And his funeral was actually televised because of his position. And the way Islamically you grieve and do a funeral service is you have a jama'ah prayer, which means a group prayer. And it's a specific prayer that the intention is to ask God for forgiveness of the sins of the deceased. Okay. And our faith is a very quick turnaround. Like, the person dies, you're burying within 12, 24 hours max. And so the prayer is the big thing. And afterwards, they bury the body immediately, and we don't do caskets, we don't do embalming.
It's just the body in the ground.
You're wrapped in a natural, like, biodegradable, usually 100% cotton fabric, and placed directly into the earth. We don't do gravesides. In fact, it's like pretty frowned upon to walk on grave sites. Wow. And in Turkey, they'll create little, like, sections, and then they'll stone it off and brick it off so that no matter what, nobody could ever step on where a body's buried.
Is there a marker that says who it is?
It depends. In Saudi Arabia, they don't do markers. And in Turkey, they do, but it depends. Like, you have to pay for it and buy for it. But generally, no. Typically, no. In fact, when you asked me about my grief story, I really focused on one while I tend to forget about the other. Back in 2023, my aunt, who was my father's sister, her and my cousin, and my other aunt, non-biological aunt, were in the car going to make Umrah, which is one of the pilgrimages. And they were killed in a car accident. So this was all the way on the other side of the world. She lived in Saudi Arabia, and so I didn't see her frequently, but we talked on the phone as much as we could. And that was so sudden, and I feel to this day that I still fully haven't processed that grief. She was just recently a widow, and the plan was for her to come to America. I was planning my wedding at the time, and she was so excited for our wedding, and then she was gone, and not being able to attend a prayer for her, not really having any part in that that grieving process kind of left me at the time. I was like working to adopt a child and planning a wedding, and it kind of just, like, because it wasn't immediately in my face, it just kind of got put off.
Like, you had no closure.
Yeah. No closure, no conclusion, no formal practice of grief in that way. And I think my whole family is still like really affected in that way by that. So, and I think the beautiful thing of how we do funerals and being very quick is that it's, we see it as our job to help usher a soul to the next phase. And so that's why we don't prolong funerals, and we pray immediately for their sins to be erased. But it also means that culturally, it can lead to people like wiping their hands of it, and
like you should be done with grief.
You're done with it.
Yeah.
Now. And I think that's where we could stand as a culture, as a Muslim culture, to remember more to the like root of what the faith says and how we sit with our grief. Widows are typically expected to like really not leave the house much for the first like 6 or 7 days, and to like wear black clothing. But that's really a cultural thing, not a religious element. So the religious aspects of doing a quick turnaround, a group prayer, and then typically like gifting food to the family of the grieving.
That's universal, isn't it?
Universal. Dude,
if somebody's hurting, bring them food. Casseroles in the South.
It's so hard to think about how to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
When all you can do is think about your loved one that's no longer here.
Yeah, you don't even really want to eat, but other people don't know what to do. And so they think, oh, well, they don't feel like cooking. I'll bring them food because I know how to do that. Let's talk about that. Angel, what are some of the things that people did for you or said to you that were helpful in your mourning?
Sure. So after we lost my dad, yes, the food was helpful. I mean, that was.
Did you have a lot of family to feed?
We did. We have family that travel and friends, close friends that had traveled here, and it was nice to have food that somebody else had brought that we didn't have to put together and prepare.
Right.
So I wouldn't tell anybody don't do the food. I would say find out who's taking the charge on leading and organizing that for the people who are going to do it. And that's true whether it's somebody that's lost someone or someone where they're sick. I mean, I know that.
Ask about food allergies. Ask what they like, what they don't like.
And when you're well loved, and a lot of people want to take care of you, they're gonna do things, and they mean really well. But sometimes it might be best to bring something that's frozen. That's a frozen,
that they can eat later.
And here's instructions that you can do. And the portions, like, well, I want to make sure that they have enough to feed 10 people. Well, there's only family of 3 or family of 4.
Right.
And then they start to get overwhelmed with like,
have a
what
fridge
am I gonna do with
full
all
of
this
food
left?
already.
Yeah, that was my experience. It's just too much. I only had my kids and grandkid there. It was too much. It was overwhelming.
I wouldn't discourage people from that. I tell you that one of the most helpful things for me was some of the friends that will call me, and some of the guys that will call me like 3 months after, 4 6 months after.
Yeah.
Be like, hey man, how are you doing? It's like, I'm gonna just go grab coffee and go grab lunch and talk. And whether that's necessarily to talk about the loss or the grieving time or not, sometimes it was best that they just let me bring it up if I felt like I was going to bring it up or not. Yeah. I remember meeting with a good friend of mine, Brian Pitts. He used to work at Sanford. And I remember talking with him, and it's like, I remember telling Brian, I said, I can see why some people turn to drugs and alcohol during this time of process of grieving, because for at one point, you just want to numb it. You just want to not feel the pain. And you know that there's nothing that can make that happen. So you start thinking, and for me, definitely, it's one point where I had to hold on to my faith really strong, very strongly, just knowing that this is not all that there was. So, but it's okay to have those conversations in I guess in dosages, like just like break them down. And the friends that call me up and be like, yeah, let's go grab breakfast. And so I was looking up a verse that I came across recently. It's in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 7. It says, the end of all things is near. Therefore, be alert and sober mind. so that you may pray. And the idea of sobering, like sober, there is nothing more sobering than the thought of death. And for all of us, this culture is so obsessed with eternal youth and well-being and so on that we like to not talk about it. But we're here for a very short period of time. And coming to grips with that and what's going to happen and the afterlife, it plays a big role. So,
thank you. How about you, Meryeum?
Yeah, when my grandmother passed, I had my roommate at the time, who's still my dear friend. She asked me the question, do you need to feel or do you need to be distracted? And she would ask
like
me that.
FEEL. Do you need to feel?
Do you need to feel?
To feel, yes.
Or do you need to be distracted? And she asked me that almost every day for like 6 months.
That's great.
And at the time, I knew it got to the point where I expected the question. And there were moments where I was like, oh my God, I don't want to have to, I don't know. Like, I don't know, Abby, I don't know. And then she would usually know, okay, that means you might need to feel. And it was so helpful to have someone who is holding me accountable to what would be, I mean, both are necessary, right? We have to be distracted in order to get through the day to day, to do the next right thing, right?
Yep.
But we can't do the next right thing if we don't also give ourselves the space to feel.
Yes.
And that is usually the harder choice, to choose to feel, especially if you are just trying to survive, right? But her holding me accountable to the reminder that I needed to do both, but it was always my choice, right? I feel in grief so often, it's so easy to feel like we are not in control of our feelings because we're feeling so much all the time, you know, and to just know that every day I was going to have to choose. And for the 10, 15, 30 minutes that we were sitting together on the couch after work, she was giving me the space to either feel or give me a distraction.
And she was also being present for you. You like
holding the space to be present, to make it known that she was there and that she was comfortable with either. But also that like there was no pressure.
Right.
And it wasn't, I didn't have to.
Right.
But it was there if I needed it. And that stability and that comfort, when at the time I felt very much so that I was having to be the support and the comfort for everyone else.
Right.
To come home and have that, I don't think at the time I truly understood how impactful and how helpful it was to me. But that's what I now, when I have someone in my life that I know has passed, just to check in every once in a while, like, hey, just here thinking of you.
Yeah.
I'm here if you want a distraction or if you want to chat.
I love that.
And like leading with that, that's the best I can do, and that's what I know was helpful to me. And so I just hope that as a friend or as somebody who is loving someone who's grieving, we can remember that like you don't have to say the right thing.
No.
Nobody is asking anything of you, the person who is just loving someone grieving. But if you can be that person to give them the approval to feel or to be distracted, I mean, that was such a gift to me. And I'm just now being that friend who can do it. I feel it has been, at least selfishly, it's been helpful to feel like I have something to offer.
Oh, that is beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's huge.
Yeah, I have to agree. That's very important because, and you're probably going to ask about this, but things that were not helpful. And it's sad. Like there are times when you are not in the state of mind to go there or talk about it, and you're trying to not think about it. And people come and be like, hey, man, so how you doing? And by the way, how's your mom? How's her grieving? You don't really want to talk about that at the moment.
Yeah.
But we don't know that. Like if I'm going to talk to someone that's where being assertive and maybe even having a conversation ahead of time. It's like, hey, occasionally I might look at you. It's like, hey, are you wanting to? That's a great idea. You wanting to feel, or you need looking for distraction. I mean, I remember when a friend of mine lost his brother. I remember I just called him up and said, hey, let's go to the movies and watch. I don't know. I think we watched like Deadpool or something. Something
that's a distraction.
Yeah, for real, right? But we didn't talk about anything regarding his brother at all.
Yeah,
we just went to the movies, got some popcorn, watched the movie, and so on. But to my friend, I know that meant, hey, I'm your friend. I'm here with you, and I'm okay to, if what we need is just to be distracted together and do that. But if you want to talk, then we can do that as well, because we need to be allowed to grieve. And I think I would tell people that the psychology is counselors will summarize it so much like, oh, well, you get your stages, you get your denial, your anger, your time of bargaining, and then your acceptance. But the reality is like you don't go through all those and then that's it. That you go through different stages, and sometimes you go back.
It's not linear,
right?
And now you're back to anger, and then so it being sensitive to where people may be, and like you said, taking the pressure off. That the reality is there's absolutely nothing I can say that's going to take the pain away automatically, because that's not going to happen. So for us to have the expectation ahead of time that for this person, I'm over here and I'm sad, I'm down about what just happened, and then I'm at the funeral, and then I go home, and next week I'm not thinking much about it, but the next week is probably the hardest for that person, or the next month, because we're not present. We're not the ones with a house minus a family member. So there's nothing. And so having that idea that I take the pressure off. There's nothing that I have to say that I can say that would. So the most important is just like, hey, listen, I'm here with you, and we're gonna do this together.
Right.
I love that. Thank you both so much. That is so wise and so helpful to those. And again, the message is you don't have to say or do anything. Just be present for that person. And I would remind you that grief has no expiration date. Meryeum's still grieving her aunt all these years later. And so just checking in with people, just a text or a handwritten note, or want to go see Deadpool at the movie or some other, movie. Just being present for people is what they need. So thank you, Meryeum and Angel, for sharing your stories with us and for sharing your wisdom. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Stacia.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, pleasure.
I'm so glad you joined me for SURTHRIVAL today. My goal is to help fellow mourners move forward in their grief journey, even if it's just a baby step. If you know someone who is grieving and would benefit from SURTHRIVAL, please send them a link to the podcast. You can do this by clicking on the 3 dots on the podcast link and selecting Share. I want this message to get to the people who need it most, and I need your help to do this. You can also go to my website, surthrivalpodcast.com/podcast, and share it from there.